All right, welcome everyone to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me on the March energy update. This was a really interesting one, and what was interesting about it is Spirit kept giving me I would try and tune into it, and they wouldn't give me anything, and they wouldn't give me anything. And I was like, why aren't you giving me anything for the month of March? Like, what's going on? And so, I like to usually prepare these a little bit before, not like a month or anything, but just like a week or so before, maybe 2 weeks, kind of start gathering the things, and I kind of build it as we go. And Spirit was like, nope, nothing. And I was like, is something happening in March that I don't know is coming, or like something big that is about to go down? And Spirit said, so when I finally was able to connect with him, what was really interesting is Spirit showed me that there has been so much timeline fluidity. It has been more challenging for them to give concrete things because there's so much fluidity in it. So today, when I sat down to connect with Spirit and say, okay, what are we going to talk about for the March energy update? They said, okay, we can come in and we can fill you in now. And the first thing they wanted to talk about was that timeline fluidity, and the glitches that many of you, I'm sure, are experiencing and feeling, because this glitchiness is really giving validity to the fluidity, right? It really is. And the reason why is because there are, a lot of people say there are infinite number of timelines, and I've asked Spirit, how many timelines are there? And they don't give me a definitive answer. They also don't say definitively that it is infinite, but it is like it's infinite. This is the best way I can explain it. There are kind of like endless possibilities to the point in which I can see. And so if in one sense, every choice and decision we make changes the trajectory of a particular timeline, if we look at it on a very micro level, there are also destiny points, both individually and collective, on these timelines. So one way to visualize that is as a collective, so as the world, our planet, we may have a few variable timelines in there that as a collective, the highest proportion of people thinking or doing a certain thing aligns with a particular timeline. When we take almost like a microscope down into our own individual timelines within that, though, we also have a varying degree of parallel timelines or available timelines that we can choose from. So within our individual ones right now, as well as the greater collective one, although I want to say the greater collective one feels like the way they show it to me right now is there is one bigger timeline and we're about to veer off in kind of a Y shape. And we're taking the one at this point in the highest probability to the right, which is a very good thing. So that's happening in the collective timeline. But in our individual timelines, what helps dictate that direction on the collective is our choices and what we do and how we think. And so what happens is the permeability, if I could put it that way, between the timelines allows for more fluidity between them, meaning you can easily move between different kind of parallel lives or parallel timelines, if you want to see it that way. And so that can look like glitches in you remembering having a conversation, but the person you're talking to does not. They're like, that never happened. Or you could be watching something, say on TV, you turn around and you look back and you're rewatching what you just watched for the last minute. Now, yes, that can be a technical glitch. And if that happens, I encourage you to check out, is that a technical glitch? Did your computer freeze or something? Because it could be. But if it hasn't, those are examples of timeline glitches. Or like driving down the road, same road you drive often, and all of a sudden there's a tree there that you swear wasn't there before. Like you were certain it wasn't there before. That can be indicative of a timeline glitch or switch, right? Where you're noticing a different, slightly alternate timeline. And so what Spirit said for the month of March within this is to focus on your response to your reality. Because what happens is people can often get really overwhelmed by this occurrence, right? Like noticing these glitches and things like that can be very overwhelming and can cause us to feel like out of alignment or weird or off or panicky or, I'm losing it kind of feels. with this permeability and this fluidity, they said just be really present in whichever reality you're in and find your alignments within that. Because what that does is when you focus on your response to your reality, you are more clearly dictating the one in which you wish to be in, or the one in which you wish to reinforce, right? So it's about your consistency in thought, your consistency in practice, your consistency in what you do every day, and the little things help reinforce things. Kind of like habits. They're showing me right now habits in my mind. You know, the idea that it takes like 21 days to create a new habit, and that happens by repeating patterns. Repeating an action helps make that more consistent and predictable in your timeline. So if you do that same thing with habits and you apply it into your response in reality, with that in mind, you're creating that reality. If that makes sense. And again, that's like that very individual reality versus the collective reality, because we have the two at play, but it's in our individual timelines, our individual parallel lives, if you will, that is where a lot of the movement is happening right now. So there is timeline fluidity and glitches. Notice them and focus on your response in it. Do you like it? Do you not? This is all happening too because you are becoming more aware of the multidimensional nature of self. And Spirit has talked about that for a while, and I've talked about it as well. We are in a level of consciousness now that we are becoming more aware of our multidimensionality. And part of that is having experiences that don't fit our 3D box of known physics on this planet. And to be in that transition phase of it can be a little bit unnerving because it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit our known reality. It doesn't mean it's not possible. So again, focus on your response to your reality and focus on what it is you're wanting to create in that, okay? The second point that they wanted to talk about for the month of March is nature coming alive. And when they first brought that up, I was like, oh, that's fantastic. Like, in what way is that happening? And they said it's kind of on two levels. So on one level, on the bigger scale, kind of the planetary scale, we're going to see more Earth events and more storm energy. So there is going to be, again, this resurgence kind of starting in March, but not limited to, but resurgence of fires and a resurgence of floods and earthquakes as well, like earth events, because Mother Nature is also kind of shifting, not necessarily reality, but kind of reality. I'm not quite sure how to explain that beyond that. Mother Earth is also shifting and changing and growing. And within that, there are adjustments that the Earth has to make as well in response to all the things that are going on, whether that be global warming or fracking and mining and all of this kind of stuff has a cause and effect, and that in response with Mother Earth is different Earth events. So we are going to see that. I want to say too, there's a big storm energy happening too. So like it's almost like the frequential effects of what's happening on the planet are reverberating into like the atmosphere and the ionosphere, which causes Earth events. It kind of is a cyclical nature is what they're showing me right now. So we're going to be seeing that, okay? The second part of that, though, is nature is coming alive in terms of your connection with it, too. So I know Spirit has talked about this before in the past, but your ability to connect into nature as a being, like a tree, as a consciousness, flowers or gardens as consciousness, stones and crystals as consciousness, you will be able to have that connection. Some of you may be able to have that connection in a way where it feels like a tree talks to you and you, I don't know, you might hear a voice, but you may just more like feel a communication of sorts. Like maybe you're leaning on a tree and you feel this energy of the tree being like, you know, you can sit here for as long as you need. I'm here for you, right? Something like that, like a feeling like that. Nature wants to, Spirit keeps saying nature wants to be sovereign. And I find that really interesting they keep saying that. But in a sense, it's like it wants to communicate its consciousness with you. And so for many of you, you may start to be able to experience that if you haven't already. And that goes all the way down even to the elemental nature. And I'm not talking about elementals as in fairies, because that's a different topic. I'm talking about like the frequency consciousness in water, in fire, in air, in earth, ether. That elemental aspect of Mother Nature also has its consciousness. So there are so many ways that nature can communicate with you. I mean, animals, of course, but this I'm seeing as the more perceived inert aspects of nature, like trees or rocks, right? It would be really interesting if you were to go out this month of March into nature a couple times. It'd probably take a couple times to kind of settle into that frequency, but just sit quietly and tune in. Like, you know, when you go out into the woods and, you know, say you're camping and you're away from city lights and city noise and cars and even people, and you sit there and at first everything just seems quiet. But then when you actually sit there, it actually comes alive. And we hear the birds and we hear the insects and we even hear the moving of the trees and the creaking of the trees and the rustling of the leaves. But then beyond that can start to come the energetic voices or the energetic frequencies, or however that works for you, the energetic communication of Mother Nature to you. So that's something that Spirit really encourages all of you to do, is to get out into nature and watch it come alive, because nature wants to express its sovereign being, which is so cool. I love that they're saying that. All right, the third point for this month is Spirit says, take up space. Take up your space. And they said, mark your territory. And I kind of laughed when they said that. I was like, you know what that kind of means, right? Like when animals mark their territory and stuff. And they started laughing. And they said, okay, mark your energetic territory. And when I asked them to further explain, they said, like, walk purposefully wherever you go. Take up the space wherever you go. And that doesn't mean, being over and above other people, but being fully in your frequency wherever you go. Don't dim your light anywhere. You can choose to engage in something and you can choose to sit back and not engage, but you're doing so in your fullness. You're not doing so by shrinking because you feel less than or less worthy or whatever that may be. You're choosing to step back to observe, but you're still in your full expression of self, right? Also, take up your own intellectual space, they're saying too. There's such a value of holding steady to what you know while keeping an open mind to more that you can learn. Many of us don't realize how much intellectual growth we've had in the last while, as well as spiritual growth, as well as emotional growth. But they said, recognize your intellectual growth too. Like, instead of always just checking with Spirit, what should I do about this? What should I do about that? What about this? Check your own intellectual library of knowledge also. Bring it to the table as well, because you have gained a lot of information. And so within that, Spirit is saying, take up your space in all of the ways, in the intelligence that you carry, in the energy that you carry, in the worthiness that you are, the fact that you matter in this world, in all of the interactions that you take part in. Take up the space and, like they said, mark your energetic territory. All right, number 4. And there's only one more after this. There's 5 in total. So number 4 is reunions in unions. And when they said that, I was really interested. I was like, oh, does this mean a lot of people from, people's past are coming in? And they said, no, this is more based on soul contract unions. So we've been talking about divine union and divine pairing, and I talked about it in the February Cosmic Consciousness, divine union within self. But this is like soul contract unions really coming to the forefront. And in many cases, they are reunions because they are, how would I put this? They're reunions of souls who have most likely united together in past lifetimes. These might be reunions of people you've connected with earlier in this life as well, but it's because it's based in a soul contract union. So within this reunion and union, really open up to everything Spirit has been saying for the last couple months about divine unions and divine pairings happening. Notice the alignments, notice those synchronistic events, notice the callings in your heart that kind of, ask you to, make a stop here on the way home, even though you're like, I was going to get groceries later, but something just pulls you into the parking lot. Follow it, because it's leading you to these really interesting reunions in different ways. And you will know when you're feeling it. It's not a matter of trying to make it happen, like, oh, I'm driving home and you think of this podcast and you're like, maybe I should turn right. I mean, if you want, go for it and see what's there, right? But I'm talking more specifically about the ones that just, you get to that spot and you're like, I don't even know why I drove here. Or something so loudly tells you to turn right that you're just like, whoa, what happened? Like, it's those kind of synchronistic experiences from Spirit that are really going to drive you in the direction of that reunion in these divine soul contract unions. So something really neat, because we're sitting in such a beautiful creation point of building new connections and new ways of doing things within union, within community, within partnership, within relationships, all of that, because we have cleared out so much space in our own beings that these unions are really possible now to create beautiful change and growth for the planet, for people, and also for you. Here's the other part, is when you accomplish something within a soul contract, there is a deep satisfaction that runs through your entire being, your mind, body, and your spirit, even through your higher self. There is like, they're showing me right now, like, when you see people hit a giant church bell and you slow down like you put it on slow motion on camera and you can see it actually vibrating. There is that kind of vibrational frequency resonance that runs through your entire being when you accomplish a soul contract part. And right now, a big part of that is union. So notice how that's happening. And as well, Spirit, last minute before I move on here, they're saying, also remind them that this soul contract union can also be a reunion or a deepening of union within current relationships as well. Because you may have a soul contract piece in your divine blueprint that this person will help ignite something in you or help back you up in a certain experience. And maybe you just haven't hit that experience yet, but maybe you are going to, and this person who's already been in your life becomes that divine partner for that thing. So there's many ways this can show itself, but these are soul contract written pieces that are connecting into union and are really coming to the forefront now in beautiful synchronistic ways. So follow your heart space, follow that heart energy into where you need to be led. All right, and the fifth and final point for the March energy update is about the spring equinox. We have the spring energy abundant this month. For many people, they also see this as the true start of the new year, astrologically speaking. The spring energy is really this kind of allowing things to grow again. And so it's a beautiful time to really ponder what has been released, what you let go, what has died and is now prepping in rebirth. It's a big rebirth energy, renewal energy. And Spirit had showed me the imagery of prepping the soil after the death and the dying of plants and all of that. Prepping the soil again and planting the seeds in that renewal and rebirth energy of that which you wish to grow. And so this can come in a whole bunch of different ways. This can be you just pondering that. This can be you actively doing that in your garden, connecting with the actual manifestation of that spring energy. This can also be, though, sitting and journaling or pondering or reflecting on how far you've come, again, in these last 4 years, 2020 to the beginning of this year, 2024. It's 100 years worth of growth. There is a ton of death and rebirth energy within those 4 years to bring you to this really unique energy of 2024. And now we're stepping into that renewal phase, that like real upswing of growth energy. spending some time and reflecting on that, reviewing, pondering, putting into place your desires and manifestations is so beneficial with the energy now. This is a really big, beautiful, bountiful thing. So Spirit definitely wants to encourage you to do that. And again, if we go back to then connecting with nature in that, and with nature being in the energy of, again, in our end of the hemisphere here, renewal and rebirth, if you connect into that energy as well in your own internal renewal and rebirth, you're creating this amplification of possibilities. And there are miracles that are abundant in nature right now. There is so much healing that is available in a lot of different ways for various different things. And again, this isn't everything is utopia type message, but this is about like empowering you in the position you're in now, and what can you do about it? How can you create renewal and rebirth and this fresh phase of life for yourself? So I will leave that with all of you for now. Thank you so much for joining me as always on the podcast. I sure appreciate it. Please do share and subscribe and like or rate, depending on where or how you're listening or watching to this. But again, thank you so much as always. I appreciate you, and I will see you all next week. Have a beautiful start to the energy of March.